All right, we're back with another edition of Coach's Consideration, talking about planning. The month of December is all about planning, Coach. We're heading into 2021. You know, some people might say 2020 was a wild year. How can we set up planning? How can we plan for a dynamite 2021? And maybe you want to take it in a different direction with some shorter term planning. But what is planning? What role does planning play in the grand scheme of things?
What type of year is it going to be for you? What type of year do you want it to be for you? What type of year do you want to create? Is this going to be a year where everything changes? Is this going to be a year where you say, that's it, enough? This part of my life, I'm going to make a massive upgrade on. This is going to be the year where I change my health around, where I change my finances around. I change my baseline happiness around, my relationships, my business, my career, whatever it is. Like, is it going to be a big year for you? Because it's possible. It's just upfront deciding what type of year it. If 10 out of 10 is the most change and growth that you possibly get, where do you want it to be? Do you want it to be middle of the road 5, where it's basically just do a little bit better on everything that you're doing, or do you want to make it an 8 or a 9, whereas like one part of your life is a massive upgrade and that's where you're going to focus going to be? All right, you want to make it a 10 where you got like you're doing like 3 or 4 things where you're just pushing yourself exponentially. I think that's the first conversation to have with yourself, to cast a vision about where you want to be. And then the bearing that has on milestones is different depending on that intensity of where you are and what you want to be. The more intense, the more you want to create, the more upgrades you want to make, the more specific and frequent you want to make those milestones. So you can measure it more, you can show progress more, you can get more clarity. Because the more that you're going to go after, the easier it is to get into complexity, which we know is the enemy of execution. So I think it's a function of those few things. How do you think about it?
Yeah. I think milestones are useful to make sure that there's an actionable path to getting the result we want, right? So the result does not really imply action. It's something. It's an ending that we want. And as we know, there's no ending. It just keeps going. But it's the plan or the goal for the end of 2020. The plan or the goal for the end of 2021 is almost a milestone in itself, right? Because it doesn't end there. So it's just, to your point, how do you measure working backwards, to make sure that you're on track to achieve those things. So when you work backwards from the result that you want, actionable things come up. You know, so you want to be successful in your business. How do you work backwards? Well, maybe I have to establish an LLC. I have no idea how to do that. What would I need to do? I need to do this. I need to check with this. I need to call this person. Action steps come from working backwards from the desired result that you want. And I think those milestones help along that process know that you're on the right, like let you know that you're on the right path to achieving a desired result.
Yeah, it's the scale, right? And the contrast and the context. Everything falls into that, or seems to fall into those areas. And because it also creates urgency as well. If you say, I want to lose weight, I want to run a marathon one day, then there's no urgency, 0. Because you're like, one day is just it's infinite. Your mind's telling you it's not important right now. Don't prioritize it. If you decide that you're going to run a marathon, I'm going to book the New York Marathon in November 21 or whenever it is. And you go, okay, that's something specific. And then you can bring it back in the months and the quarters. You can bring it back all the way to January. Okay, by January, I need to have run a collective of 20 miles or whatever it might be. And we're like, okay, first week in January, I've got to run 3 miles. I know that's got to happen. So it gives you the urgency because it gives you, you know what you need to do immediately. It's not just someday. That's really important because we know anything's possible, but without the urgency, then we won't do it because we're always going to take the path of least resistance. We need the leverage.
Yeah, I love that example because you know, people who train for a marathon, it's a ramp up, it's a gradual progression of achievement. So yeah, so if it's in November, by May, how many miles should I be running a day? Or, at the end of each week, what is the number of miles I want to get to, so that I'm progressively realizing that goal. And that's such a good example because it's long term too. You can't train for a marathon in a week or even a month, right? It's a build up to it. So um, maybe we can phrase this question, because I think sometimes the long term big picture scares people, or they underestimate what they can accomplish in a year's time. What sort of advice would you have to somebody who maybe hasn't done this before, or is just starting to feel like, oh, I can be intentional about the results that I'm getting. I want to try this for the first time. What would that look like in the next month or the next couple of weeks, through the end of December? Um, what kind of coaching would you give to people who are starting to get excited about being intentional about planning their desired results for 2021?
Small, 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 small. It's we want to remind ourselves that anything's possible, right? Coach, me and you do this every day, so it's drilled into us, and we see examples of it all the time. Like a deep belief, and certainly I don't want to speak for you, but certainly for me, is that anything's possible. We can do whatever we want. It's amazing what we can achieve as humans. Always coming from that frame. And if that's not something that you have a frame of, or have experience of from yourself, or seen from other people, then that's not going to be quite as strong. But and so you need to build up references. So start with something that's small. And so all of those things I just said in a kind of grandiose way of like, what do you want to create? How intense do you want to be about it? Just start off with something in your life, like one area of your life. We all know the generic areas of your life. I mentioned them already. So it's something to do with your finances, something to do with your career, something to do with your business, relationships, spirituality, or health overall. Like those things are fairly generic. So break down for you what's most important. You can even use a scale to rank those if you're not sure which is most important, and you'll start to see where your gaps are. And you can pick just one area. So okay, well, I want to make this to this, and I just want to do an experiment over the next month. If I say, look, my health is right now, I weigh X amount, I want to get to X amount, and I'll make it really, really small. So I look at it and go, yeah, that sounds like something I can absolutely do right now, without even starting. I already know that I can get there. Like I've got a month, and I'm at 250 pounds, and I want to 245 pounds. That sounds completely reasonable. Or 247 pounds. That sounds completely reasonable. And just experiment. Like, what would you do if you were a person that weighed less, that weighed a bit less? If you wanted to move towards something, what might you do? And just experiment with doing some small things. Because, as you know, coach, the small things aren't the small things. They add up to be the big things. And my bet is if you took that and just went small and allowed yourself a lot of grace and compassion, my bet is that after that time, you'll learn a lot of stuff. You learn that you can do what you said you're going to do. And all you've got to do is be consistent about that, and you can have whatever you want and build it from there. Because what that does is it starts to change your identity of who you think you are and what's possible. And if at a baseline you think anything's possible, what's the likelihood that you're going to do things that you want? Or what's the likelihood you're going to start to dream about the things that you do want? Because here's the thing, and what's so scary, I did this exercise with a lady a few weeks back of starting to cast a vision for 5 years out, 2025. And she did a great job about it in terms of being involved and being into it and committing to it and playing full out. But the result of what she actually said was very similar to where she was in her life right now. Nothing wrong with that, no judgment. It's just interesting to see when you ask someone they can have whatever they want and they give you just a slightly upgraded version of where you are, you can see that they're out of practice. They've never practiced that, and so if that's the case, then it makes sense that they can't get there yet. But how much fun would it be if you could practice that? What would it mean if you did ever go a couple versions of it to create the real draft first version, right? And start to really show yourself what you could achieve. Like, think about where you can end up over the next 10 years if you started to do that. And that's what everyone should be excited about, is starting to like build some sort of baseline of exploration for themselves.
Yeah. We talk about sometimes, or a lot of times, that zoomed in and zoomed out lens, right? And we tend to be overly hard on ourselves in the short term with what we think we can accomplish. And then maybe we let ourselves off the hook a little bit with the long-term things. And we talk about long-term thinking, short-term actions. Like what is a life that you would love to live? And if you think of yourself right now in the life that you're living, rewind 5 years ago. Where were you? Did you think this life was possible? How intentional were you about the life that you're living now 5 years ago? And maybe you were a little bit, maybe some things came to fruition. Maybe some things that you're thinking about now from the past excite you with like, oh, wow, I forgot that started with just a thought in my mind, something that I would want. It would have been a nice to have, and I have it now. And then just like taking that momentum and letting yourself go there, letting yourself dream. And to me, that's what like the planning part of that comes from actually putting actions or proposed actions to a desired result. And you say it all the time, we only get our musts. We'll make the big picture things that we want to have our musts, because what's going to happen, and maybe this is the best advice right here, just start somewhere. Even if it's something that is so crazy, or even if it's something small that's, like I want to lose 3 pounds this year, that's an extreme example, but when you start out and when you see that there's actions that you can genuinely take to move towards these goals, your views of these goals will change, or they won't. Or you might find that this is perfect, this is exactly what I want, and I'm moving towards it, and it's rewarding, and I feel good doing it. I'm challenging myself. Awesome. More likely than not, no matter what that goal is, whether you hit it early or something happens to deflect you on that path, you will get some sort of new viewpoint that will prompt you to adjust that plan, and no problem with that either. But it's just about getting started with something. And maybe if you're pushing off towards England, you know what, the weather's nicer in France. The weather's nicer in France. I want some sunshine on my vacation here. And you got to take care of the passport situation and other things, but just letting yourself know what's possible, and knowing that it could change along the journey, but it won't. You can never get to that point unless you start somewhere. And that's what planning is. Planning brings it down, boils it down to that simplistic level of what are the actions that I can take this month, rewind it more this week, and then today. What can I do today to start moving towards my goals?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny, isn't it? You're just not the same person. There's no way you could have seen. Some people say, well, I wish I'd done that, or I wish I didn't do that. Oh, such a shame that happened. Not helpful, right? What is helpful is that you did it, and now you can see something else. You couldn't see that something else before because you were a different person then. It wasn't available to you. It's like if you've watched a movie when you're growing up and then you watch it again as an adult, you're like, that was a completely different movie. You're just a different person when you see it again. It's different references. Not bad or worse, by the way, just different. It's so powerful to be able to do that. And sometimes there's, I guess, to really think about the word planning or like the connotations around it as well. Maybe that's something to think about, is to transform that into something that maybe serves you more.
Let's do that now. What's a good word or concept that we can associate? We can tie to planning and success, or planning leads to success, or planning in something else.
Dreaming, like creating. Creating's great for me. Planning can feel a little bit dry sometimes, maybe, but it's different for everyone. Creating, dreaming, preparing.
How about this? What do you get when you think about planning? What gets you the most excited? Why would you be like, yes, let's plan. I'm down for this. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's the clarity you get, right? It's creating clarity, and that's what the excitement comes from. And that's what helpful through the year as well, or through the journey to any milestone, is associating yourself to why. Because you can say, I want $1 million. Okay. Very generically, why do you want $1 million? And then you're going to get the high level answers, because then I would have $1 million. Very great. But why? Like, what will that give you? And you can keep digging, and you'll go from, because I want to be able to spend the money. I want to be able to pay off some debt. I want to be able to help people out. I want to be able to have some fun. And then you've got to get even lower to the next level down, which is going to be because it means this to me. It means I'm the type of person that is able to look after my friends. And then you're going to hit the real motion is like, because I'm going to feel just like I'm the person I was supposed to be. And then you're going to get to what, because it's the person I'm supposed to become. That's the person I am. That's me. And then when you can get people associated with that depth, the planning takes care of itself, because there's an emotional pull, there's a compelling future. So planning is that. Planning is creating a compelling future. Planning is why you get out of bed. Like, creating compelling future is why you get out of bed, and you got a plan in order to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's bizarre, right? Because like if you had a money box and at the beginning of the year you said, like, if I put $1 in this money box in the year, how many dollars would I have? Well, $365, obviously. Okay. So what if you instead of putting $1 in the money box, you put a workout in the money box? How many workouts would you have by the end of the year? 365. And would that buy you more than 300? Would you rather have that than $365? Probably for most people, yeah. If they were really honest with themselves, so maybe working out's not their jam, but like if they're really honest with themselves, what that will give them ultimately is more capacity. They're investing in themselves. Like putting $1 a day in a jar or a workout a day in you is an investment. You're creating an investment versus just saving a bit off the top. You're adding more rather than just like creating a different way of seeing the money you already have.
Mm. I like that example because it's something so small. Like make it $5 a day. $5 a day is completely possible, right? It's the equivalent of, finding a $5 bill in your wallet and just putting it in a bowl. What do you have at the end of the year? It's $1,500+ probably closer to $2,000. It's a good chunk of change, and all you're doing is a daily activity of setting $5 aside. So apply that to all those pillars that you mentioned: relationships, professional life, spirituality. What are simple things you can do every day? And maybe it's only 5 days a week, maybe it's during the week, but eventually or pretty soon you're setting up an ideal week that is manageable, and that, as we know, consistency over time yields results. Those incremental movements towards that goal on a day-to-day level get you to a place at the end of the year that you would want to be. You'd fall in love with that person. You would embrace that and just embody every part of that lifestyle because of these things that you're doing over that time. And the other thing is, Nick, like everything else falls away then. Those things that you find that are busy work or are not as important are like, okay, if I don't get to those, then that's okay too. Maybe that's a bonus, or maybe that's just another, something on the side that I can get to if I have the free time. But we only have so much time on this earth. And I think the cool thing about the future is that it's coming. No matter what we do, time moves on, right? It's going to be here no matter what we do. So we might as well be intentional about the things we do to create, love that word, the lifestyle that we want, the type of person that we want to be. What does that look like? If we're really honest with ourselves, what does that person look like? And a year is just an arbitrary, period of time, but it's doable because it's enough long-term to where, maybe you have trouble thinking about what that person would look like tomorrow, but it's enough short-term where it can be broken down into actionable activities.
Yeah, it's so powerful. I love it. Because you have to follow things to the end, right? I was talking about leadership. Like the biggest mark of leadership is thinking long term. If you think of an activity you do, it will have a consequence. It has an immediate, as like the first order consequence, second order consequence, third order consequence, or short term, medium term, long term. Everything does. And the impact of that consequence is different depending on what it is, but everything will have that. Everything has a destination, or everything has a destiny. So if you're eating badly today and tomorrow and the next day, then this first order consequence of that is that you don't feel your greatest. You may not know that, by the way, if that's what you do, because you don't know what feeling good feels like. You don't know what feeling really bad feels like, which is another thing to think about as well. because to a sideline of that, like planning, and it's just jumped out at me when you said this, Coach, planning is not just important for what you do want, it's also important for what you don't want. Meaning people end up going round and round in circles with what they don't want because they've got no direction to head towards. Which one of these don't I want? Or which one of these don't I want? Well, the reason why you don't know is because you don't know what you do want. So if you move towards something and you find out you don't want it in the end, at least you haven't wasted all your time on the stuff that you already know you don't want. You can start to move towards something. You'll get some new action. But if you think about how important that is, right? It's like if you go back to the $5 a day. It's like what's your $5 a day in each area of your life? Because wherever you put that, that's the result you're gonna get to. So follow the thought of eating badly, eat badly. After a while, your medium-term effects are no energy, no motivation, because it's going to affect your brain as well. Long-term effects, you're going to get lots of diseases. That's going to waste a lot of your time, and you're going to die early. That's the destination. I can't tell you the specific stops that you'll make on the way, but the destination is a lower quality of life and less time life. Like, that's it. That's the only possible. There's no other way of putting that. Like, I don't know the specifics, but that's what's going to happen. Versus if it's constantly doing something, and if it's like the other side of that same example is working out. If you're working out every day, maybe you're not working towards a marathon or a CrossFit competition or something, whatever your sport of choice is, or a hockey competition. It's still going to send you on that destination path of looking after your body, thinking about health. And there's varying intensities in both of those things, but you can play it out. You can see what you're doing and where it's going to get you.
Yeah. I think, maybe for somebody who watches this, I think so many people, at least that I connect with, that want better. Sometimes that means for other people, they want to be able to help other people do that. And we talked about this a little bit before, but I think what planning does is prioritizes yourself. And that's not a selfish thing. There's nothing selfish about wanting something and then setting action towards getting what you want. Because in order to get what you want, you have to provide value along the way. And that value shows up in the form of maybe value for yourself. Think about working out, right? That you're valuing your own health. But what happens when you work out? You feel lighter on your feet. You're in a better mood. You meet other people at the gym. There's all these other intrinsic benefits that are incalculable. We have no idea what's going to happen when we start to perform these actions. And by prioritizing yourself, you have to prioritize other people and vice versa. So putting yourself first is such a key part of this. And maybe that's why people aren't so gung-ho about going after it, is because, well, what would my friends think, or family members? This is not me. This is unlike me, or I've never done this before. What's going to happen is, like, it's going to resonate with other people who maybe have been thinking the same thing. I'd love to plan. I haven't gotten around to it. Oh, Josh is doing that. Look at that. He's been consistent about it. He's going every day. He's working out. And then all of a sudden there's this ripple effect with all the activities that you're doing that get other people around you excited too. And it's just this resonance that builds like a wave and then compounds on top of itself to benefit not only yourself, but all those around you too.
Oh, resonance and a compounding wave. Yeah, that is money for sure. I'd almost say it's selfish to not be the best version of yourself.
Oh, you lagged out a little bit. Say that one more time. Say that again.
I'd almost say it's selfish to not be the best version of yourself. It's selfish to not go after the things you want and create them. Because meaning you're not about to give the value back to others if you're not the best version of yourself. People around you won't see that, and they can't take the value. They won't benefit from it if you're not the best version of yourself. What's interesting this year is that from a business perspective, some business owners have taken the approach of, and some people have been affected in different ways. I understand that, but you still get an opportunity to decide to take the approach of scarcity and stop doing and do less and shrink down, or abundance and just and lean into whatever's there. The people that have lent into whatever's there and maybe had some more resources in the first place, it's incumbent on them to maximize the best version of creating their business and themselves, so they have more to help the others that don't.
So huge.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we've talked and talked and talked about it, because when you take action, it's not just for yourself. There's you know, other people around you that you have to take that action with, or by taking that action, your other people are benefiting from it too. And that's that compounded wave right there. But you know, it's exciting. That's the stuff that you don't think about when you're like planning, oh, well, how much money do I want, or what kind of shape do I want to be in by the end of the year? There's all the little stuff in between that's that falling in love with the journey, right? Like, now that we know where we're going, we've pushed off from shore, we're on the ship, let's go meet some other people, let's go, you know, talk to the captain, let's see what's on the top deck there. Is there a pool? That's the enjoying life part of going. And you can do that if you don't plan. But when you have a direction that you know you would love to go, and you're in love with the activities along the way, there's nothing better. That's the secret to life right there, because you're enjoying getting to the point where you know you'll enjoy more of it.
Yeah. And then you don't even mind how long the journey is.
Yeah.
So as long as you know you're on the right path, I'm like, I don't really mind how long the journey takes, because I'm enjoying it and I know I'm moving towards where I want to be. Like, have your ladder up against the right wall. As long as the right wall, doesn't matter how long the ladder is. Like, along the way you're fine. As long as you know ultimately you'll end up in the place you want to be. That's the scary part. It's like, if there's something in you that you're not sure about what it is, or you're not convinced that you're in the right direction, get more committed, and you'll find out faster.
Coach, what's something about planning, as we start to wrap up here? What is something about planning that, because you've done it for so long, you're good at it now, that you can share with somebody that maybe you weren't good at it before you started planning? And maybe let me rephrase that, because it's kind of a complicated question, but like somebody who's not adept at planning or hasn't done it before, maybe they don't see the benefits of it, or why this year, or why them. What would you say to them?
I think I actually want to tie this back to the start, because that for me was the most important thing. If you think that this is a year where you want to do some planning, and you want to understand what it's like to do that, don't dive straight into the how. Meaning, don't just go to the how do I do this. Just first of all, get really clear for yourself that it's something you're committed to doing or not. That's the point. Because if you're only half in, you're only getting half the results, probably less. So that's the most important thing. It's like, if you're curious about, okay, this sounds like it's something interesting, just do some more exploration and decide if you're all in or not. It's like, yeah, I'm in it, I'm actually going to do it. Then go to the how. Don't go to the, okay, I'm kind of interested, let's start. Start exploring and start deciding whether you're committed or not. But the actual doing it, if you're not committed, you're not going to get the results you want, and that's only going to make things worse.
Mm-hmm. How will I know if it's something that I'm committed to?
Yeah, that's the question to ask, right? Like,
yeah.
If it's like, do you know what it even feels like to be committed? Like, how do you know if you're committed to something? It's different for everyone, and it's exploring that awareness in your mind. Like, look, if I'm really committed to this, like, there's levels of commitment, and you probably don't want to give 100% commitment to everything, because it literally means I will die before this. Before I give up this. I mean, that's the way you can take it. That's 100% commitment, is it not? I mean, that's it. Just to know you've got the levels, because people, that's where the tries and the I hope it works out come in. It's kind of like, I'm 35% committed to this, so I'm going to take 35% worth of action. We'll see what happens. I'll try, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you're essentially letting yourself off the hook. And even if you win, it won't feel good, because you didn't put anything online.
There's a motivational video. I think it's Eric Thomas, maybe, and it, this is like a legend or a myth, but talks about this guru who, he's coaching somebody, and he takes him out to the ocean, and he walks him into the water up to his chin, and then he goes under, and this is pretty grim, but he holds him underwater until like the last moment where he knows he can survive, and he lets him up, and there's that bursting upwards and just intake of air, and it's the best thing that person's ever experienced, and they just want it so bad because that's what living's all about. If you can attach a way of living or a goal of yours to as much as you want to breathe, I mean, that's some serious stuff right there, right? Because you'll get it. You'll do whatever it takes to get to that surface. You'll do whatever it takes to get $1 million. You do whatever it takes to, bench press 275 pounds. If you can attach the desire to breathe to something that, you actually want, and then just get used to embracing that pain to get through it and to embrace, the journey along the way, what can't you achieve? There's nothing you can't achieve.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so then the other way around, I love that story, by the way, is just to think, look, if there's something that you think that you want in your life and you don't have it, it's because you don't want it enough. That's it.
Yep. Or you haven't planned for it yet.
Right. Doesn't mean you can't have it.
Right. So yeah, think about what you want. Think about how badly you want it, what it would do for you, and then set up a plan. Let's talk about it and work through it. And what are the actionable steps to, the milestones along the way to achievement at the end of the year? Love it.
Absolutely, Coach. Pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you.